The Oculus Quest is a brand new headset coming in at $399 for 64 gigabytes or $499 for 128 gigabytes. But can it compare to other VR headsets, or is it simply just going to be left in the dust? Let's start with the basics. You do not need the 128 gigabyte version. It's not worth it. Just get the 64 gigabyte version, as most of the games are only going to take up about 2 gigabytes. So unless you absolutely need to be able to fit 64 games onto your Quest at all times, then I would just recommend getting the 64 gigabyte version. So now that you know not to get the 128 gigabyte version, should you buy the headset at all? Yes, you freaking idiot. Why wouldn't you buy the headset? It is amazing. It is literal perfection. Okay, but actually, though, the headset is really good. I was a bit worried at first about the battery life and the graphics, but now that I have that... Okay, but actually, though, the headset is really good. I was a bit worried about the battery life and the graphics, but now that I have the headset, I can be certain that those aren't issues. Let's start with the battery life. The headset has a battery life of 2 to 3 hours, but I can usually get about 3.5 hours. Even if that isn't long enough for you, you can just attach a battery pack to the headset and then put the battery pack in your pocket so that you don't have much cables running around. Now let's move on to graphics. The Oculus Quest has a Snapdragon 835, which at first worried me, as the Snapdragon 835 was used in phones from 2017. And it's been 2 years since 2017. So why would they put the Snapdragon 835? Well, Oculus assures us that due to the fact that they are able to focus solely on using the processor for VR, and they don't have to worry about, cellular connection, text messages, notifications, that all the processing power is put into VR, and so it's able to pull it off. And they have a partnership with Qualcomm, the company that makes Snapdragon processors, so that's likely how they're able to get it to work so well. The processor handles VR just really well. Now, the graphics aren't as well as PC VR headsets, like the Oculus Rift, the HTC Vive, the Valve Index, Windows MR headsets, but the graphics are as good as PSVR. So if you have a PSVR and you want to know how good the graphics for the Quest are, they're the same graphics as the PSVR. Really, it's that simple. And here's the thing. Graphics aren't what matters in VR. See, the thing that's more important is the experience. Yes, you need graphics that are subpar, right? You just don't need the best graphics. As once you're in VR, you kind of forget about the graphics. That's not what you're focusing on. Yes, there's wonderful games on PC VR that look beautiful, and it's due to their high graphical fidelity. It's just not the most important thing. My favorite game to play in VR right now, that is Rec Room, which is a game that is really low on graphical fidelity. It doesn't require much graphics at all, and it's great just due to the experience. The experience is what matters. And due to the fact that you don't have a million cables running around you, it has a great experience. The games are great, and they're way more immersive because you don't have, those cables that you're tripping around constantly. And I find myself engulfed into the world of VR, and it's amazing. I am so glad that I got this headset. And if you're thinking about getting one, then I'd highly recommend it. It's a wonderful VR headset, and it's everything that you could ever want. I was also a bit worried about the tracking, as it uses inside-out tracking, which is basically a system where on the Oculus Quest you have 4 cameras on the headset, 1 in each corner, and they use those cameras to, instead of tracking the headset, they track your surroundings. So you have a bit of a setup process where you draw your boundary, and then it saves that boundary. And I was a bit worried about this because in a lot of games, you have either the controllers really close to your face or they're like not really in your field of view. But I was pleasantly surprised with the fact that the Oculus Quest handles the tracking. It's perfectly. It's on point. I've only lost tracking in one game, and that was in the demo for Creed Rise to Glory. And I lost it when I was blocking, and my controllers were right up against my face. Now here's the thing. I don't think that this was due to the Quest tracking. I think it was due to the game. As I tried putting my hands close to my face in other games, after that, just to see if it was a isolated problem to the game, and it was. As in Rec Room, I put my controllers really close to my face, and they didn't lose tracking. So I was so happy with how the tracking turned out. You may have a bit of issues if you are doing some stuff that involves archery, as that has quick movements that go where the controllers are close to your face and on the side of your face. But for the most part, you should be fine. And you kind of just learn to kind of live with it, I guess. And so the tracking is just wonderful. It's so great to not have to put cameras or sensors around my room. And so I would say, though the tracking is not as good as something like the HTC Vive with the lighthouses, it is better than the Oculus Rift's tracking, in my opinion, and, that's my opinion. Now let's talk about the controllers. The controllers are perfect. They are the best VR controllers that are out currently. Keep in mind that the date is May 27th, 2019. The Valve Index controllers are not out yet. Those are the Knuckles controllers. I'm sure that those are going to be better than the Oculus Touch controllers, but those aren't out yet. And so for now, these are the best controllers. They are miles better than the Vive ones or the Windows MR controllers or the PlayStation Move controllers. They are perfect. They have a little bit of finger tracking in your index fingers and your thumbs, and then uses the grip button to kind of track the rest of your fingers. It's really cool, and games that take advantage of the finger tracking is great. It's so cool to be able to give people thumbs up or point at them or do stuff like that, like say, oh, go over there, and point with your finger. It's great, and it really, really, really helps with the immersion. As to point, you just literally point. And it's one of those things where you don't think about it. It just works. It's so intuitive, and I love it. And that's... Now, there is another small issue, and this is the really only issue that it wasn't something that was solved, right? As the headset is a bit heavy. It uses the baseball cap style head strap instead of the Halo head strap, which means that it's easier to put on and doesn't take up as much space, but isn't as comfy. And though it's less comfortable, I prefer it, as I can put on my headset in 2 seconds and immediately get into the games, whereas on PSVR with the Halo head strap, it would take me like 2 to 3 minutes every time to get it just right. And even then, mid-game, I'd constantly feel myself adjusting it. And so, yes, it's not as comfy as PSVR. It is easier to put on. And so that's not that big of a deal. Also, there is a $20 accessory that you can get to put on your headset, and it's basically just like this fabric thing that makes it a bit more comfortable. If you have much big issues with your comfortability on the headset, I'd just get one of those. It's $20, not that big of a deal. So, if you don't have a PC, because if you do have a PC, then you may as well get Rift S or a HTC Vive or something like that, I would get the Oculus Quest if you don't have a PC. It is amazing. You won't feel left out. The games are great. The graphics are good enough. The tracking is amazing. The resolution is wonderful. It has the same resolution as the HTC Vive Pro, which that's great. If you are watching movies in this, is amazing. There's a Netflix app where you're put into this living room and has a giant TV. The Oculus Quest is great. Better than PSVR in my opinion, but I'll make a whole separate video on which is better and why. But if you want a great VR experience, get the Oculus Quest.